Of the approximately 21,000 silent feature films produced in the United States between 1912 and 1929, roughly 75% no longer exist. The masters were lost in nitrate-stock fires. The prints were destroyed for their silver content. The studios let them rot. When a piece of media disappears, it does not always go quietly. Sometimes it leaves behind a still photograph, sometimes a script, sometimes the memory of a single audience member. What follows is a guided descent through the layers of lost media. The things we know existed, the things we suspect existed, and the things that have not yet been found. Tier 1, the famous losses. Cases that even casual audiences have heard of. London After Midnight. Todd Browning's 1927 silent horror feature, starring Lon Chaney Sr. in vampire makeup, was the most expensive American film of that year and a substantial commercial success. The last known complete print was destroyed in a 1965 MGM vault fire. The film has not been seen in its complete form for 60 years. What remains, production stills, a 35-page shooting script, and a 2002 reconstruction by Turner Classic Movies using stills and intertitles. The reconstruction is not the film, it is an approximation of the film, The Magnificent Ambersons. Orson Welles followed Citizen Kane with The Magnificent Ambersons in 1942. He delivered a 4-hour final cut. The studio RKO tested a preview in California, decided the film was too long and too dark, and recut it to 88 minutes against Welles' objections. The 43 minutes of footage that were removed were destroyed. The original Welles cut is the single most famous lost film of the sound era. It has been chased by scholars for 80 years. It does not exist. It was deliberately destroyed at the order of the studio. The Theater DS Vampires footage of Interview with the Vampire. Director Neil Jordan's 1994 adaptation of Anne Rice's novel originally included an extended sequence at the Theater des Vampires in Paris. Several minutes of staged theatrical vampire performance were filmed but cut. The deleted footage was not released on any home video edition. The filmmakers acknowledge it exists in the Warner Brothers archive. It has not been made available. Lost in this sense does not mean destroyed, it means inaccessible. The Day the Clown Cried. Jerry Lewis wrote, directed, and starred in a 1972 film about a Jewish clown forced to lead children into a Nazi extermination camp. The film was completed. Lewis screened it for select audiences. Almost no one who saw it considered it watchable. Lewis spent the rest of his life refusing to release it. He donated his personal print to the Library of Congress in 2014 with a 10-year embargo. That embargo expired in 2024. The library has not released the film. The reasons are unclear. The film exists, the audience does not. These are the famous losses. Below them, the catalog becomes much larger. Tier 2, the industrial losses. The scale of media that simply did not survive the technologies that recorded it. The 1965 MGM vault fire. On the 10th of August 1965, a fire broke out in MGM's nitrate storage facility at the Eastman Kodak Vault in New York's Bronx. The fire destroyed an estimated 500 to 700 individual film prints. Many of them the only existing copies of MGM productions from the 1,920 seconds and 1,930 seconds. London After Midnight was lost in this fire. So was the original cut of George Cukor's The Women. So were dozens of other titles that audiences will never see. The fire was not isolated. Similar fires destroyed RKO's vaults in 1959, Fox's East Coast Vault in 1937, Universal's archives in 2008. The 2008 fire on the Universal Studios backlot destroyed master recordings of an estimated 175,000 audio tracks, including original session tapes from John Coltrane, Aretha Franklin, Eric Clapton, and dozens of others. The full extent of the loss was not disclosed publicly until 2019. The BBC wiping policy. From 1967 to 1978, the British Broadcasting Corporation operated a policy of routinely erasing recordings of programs after broadcast. The reasoning was practical. 2-inch broadcast tape was expensive, storage space was limited, and the prevailing view was that completed broadcasts had little reuse value. As a result, hundreds of episodes of foundational British television, early Doctor Who, sketches from that was the week that was episodes of Z-Cars, Dixon of Dock Green, original musical performances on Top of the Pops were taped over for reuse on later programs. They no longer exist. Some episodes survived because individual technicians took home off-air recordings to private collections. Others survived because BBC stations in foreign countries kept their distribution copies after the rights expired. As of the current decade, 97 episodes of original Doctor Who from the 1,960 seconds remain missing. Researchers find 1 or 2 per decade in unexpected locations: a basement in Hong Kong, a private collector's attic in Nigeria, the early television era's Silent Canyon, American network television from the late 1940 seconds through the mid 1950 seconds broadcast live. Each broadcast was, by definition, performed once and gone. Kinescopes, films of the live broadcast captured by aiming a film camera at a television monitor, preserved some of this output. But the quality was poor, and the storage was limited. As a result, nearly all live American television programming from the 1949 through 1956 period exists only in scattered kinescope segments. The Texaco Star Theater, the Colgate Comedy Hour, the Goldberg Studio One. Earliest Today's Show, they were the foundation of American mass culture. They have largely vanished. The early radio's deeper canyon. American radio from the 1920 seconds through 1948 was, with rare exceptions, broadcast live and unrecorded. The networks did not maintain comprehensive archives. The shows that exist today survive because individual stations transcribe them for syndication, or because hobbyists used home wire recorders to capture broadcasts. The first season of Amos and Andy, one of the most listened to programs in radio history, is largely lost. Performances by Enrico Caruso, live broadcasts of every major sporting event before 1936. They were heard once by millions and never preserved. The lost recordings of early jazz. Buddy Bolden, considered by many to be the first true jazz musician, made wax cylinder recordings in New Orleans around 1898 or 1900. The cylinder is reported to have survived into the 1920 seconds. By the time scholars started looking for it in the 1950 seconds, it had vanished. The single recording of the man who originated American jazz, if it ever existed, has not been heard. The folklore around the cylinder is dense. The cylinder is not. At Tier 2, the scale of loss is structural. Entire eras of mass media are gone because the institutions that produce them did not value preservation. Below this tier, the losses get stranger. Tier 3, the Withdrawn. Media that was completed and released, then pulled from circulation. The original Star Wars. When George Lucas released the special editions of the original Star Wars trilogy in 1997, he made substantive changes to the original films, adding CGI characters, altering shot compositions, replacing actors digitally. He has, since 1997, declined to release the original 1977 theatrical version on any subsequent home video format. The original cut of Star Wars exists. It was the highest grossing film of its year. It is in private collections, on archival prints, and in early home video releases on Laserdisc and VHS. It has not been made commercially available since 1997. The most watched film of a generation has, by its author's choice, become a lost film in its original form. The Last Temptation of Christ in Greece. Martin Scorsese's 1988 film, based on the novel by Nikos Kazantzakis, was banned in Greece for 10 years after its release. It was banned in Singapore, in the Philippines, and several Latin American countries. Some of these bans have since been lifted, some have not. In several countries, the film cannot be commercially distributed without violating local law. Its absence from those countries' film catalogs is not voluntary on the part of the distributor. Disney's Song of the South. We covered this film in the Disney Iceberg. Its absence from circulation is now over 4 decades long. The Walt Disney Company has not released it for home viewing in the United States since the late 1980 seconds. In the United Kingdom, the film was last released on VHS in the early 1990 seconds. Used copies appear on the secondary market. The official distributor has not authorized a release in a generation. The Patrick Swayze Cold War film. In 1985, the Soviet invasion drama Red Dawn was released. In 2011, MGM produced a remake of Red Dawn in which Chinese forces invade the United States. The film was completed and ready for release. Sometime between completion and theatrical premiere, MGM digitally altered the antagonists, replacing every visible Chinese flag, uniform, and reference with North Korean equivalents. The change was made to preserve the studio's access to the Chinese theatrical market. The original China, as villain version of the film exists. It has been seen by editing staff, by international distributors, by trade press reviewers who attended early screenings. It has never been released commercially. Banned regional comedies. Throughout the 1970 seconds and 1980 seconds, regional American comedy films of varying quality were released in limited theatrical runs. Many were shelved by their distributors after poor showings. Several featured contemporary actors who later became famous and now do not wish the films to circulate. These films exist on degraded 35mm prints in private collections. They are occasionally screened at niche film festivals. Their distribution status is, in legal terms, abandoned, meaning the original distributors no longer enforce rights, but neither do they release the films. At Tier 3, the loss is by choice. Someone with authority over the work chose silence over circulation. Below this tier, the choice was sometimes not made by a person at all. Tier 4, the internet era losses. Material that was distributed digitally, then deleted, with copies that may or may not survive. The early YouTube videos. YouTube launched in February 2005. By 2007, the platform was already storing tens of millions of videos. Many of the foundational videos of internet culture from 2005 through 2008 have been deleted by their uploaders, struck by copyright claims, or lost during platform migrations. The original viral videos, the Star Wars Kid, the Numa Numa Guy, the Free Hugs campaign, exist in fragments. The original uploaded versions have been re-uploaded in lower resolution by third parties so many times that the source files are difficult to identify with certainty. One of the most watched videos of the early YouTube period, a Backstreet Boys lip sync by two Chinese students known as the Two Chinese Boys, was deleted by its original uploader. Mirror copies exist. They are not the original. The lost video games we covered separately. Tier 4 includes a separate category of internet, era-lost media, video games that were released, then patched out of existence, then withdrawn from digital stores. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was delisted from PlayStation Network. In 2014 PT, the Silent Hills demo by Hideo Kojima was removed from the PlayStation Store in 2015 after the project was cancelled. Players who had downloaded the demo before delisting retained access. New downloaders could not access it. In a digital distribution era, a piece of media can vanish from the marketplace without ever being physically destroyed. The bytes exist on individual hard drives. They cannot be obtained anywhere else. The deleted Twitter archives. In 2010, the Library of Congress announced it would archive every public tweet posted on Twitter. In 2017, the library quietly ended that program. Tweets posted after 2017 are not in the library's collection. Tweets posted before 2017 are in the collection but not searchable by the public. Then, in late 2022 and 2023, large portions of Twitter's historical content disappeared from the platform itself during the transition to the rebranded X. Old tweets, old images, old user accounts that the platform had previously preserved became, in many cases, no longer retrievable. The single largest real-time written record of human conversation in history has in significant parts become inaccessible. Whether the data still exists on server somewhere is for the public, a moot question. It cannot be reached from where the public stands. The GeoCities archive we covered in the internet, Iceberg. Yahoo killed GeoCities in 2009. The archive team preserved roughly 650,000 personal homepages. Tens of millions more were lost. The pages that were preserved are now indexed by the Internet Archive. The pages that were not preserved are gone. Among the lost pages were the personal sites of children, of teenagers, of hobbyist communities, of small businesses. The aggregate record of personal expression on the early internet has gaps that will never be filled. The MySpace music purge. In 2019, MySpace, once the largest social network in the world, announced that 12 years of user-uploaded music, photos, and videos had been lost during a server migration. 50 million songs from 14 million artists. The platform claimed the loss was unintentional. Independent reporting has suggested the loss may have been a deliberate cost-cutting measure obscured as accident. The full body of independent music uploaded to MySpace from 2003 through 2015. The platform's peak years for unsigned artist visibility is, with rare exceptions, no longer accessible. An entire generation of demos has vanished. Some of the artists involved went on to commercial careers. Their early work is now missing. At Tier 4, the medium of loss has changed. The film and broadcast losses of the earlier tiers were caused by physical decay or institutional indifference. The internet, era losses are caused by platform decisions, corporate transitions, and the fragility of distributed storage that nobody is paying to maintain. Tier 5, the hauntings. Lost, media cases that the internet has spent decades chasing. Clockman. In the early 2000s, online users began searching for a children's video they remembered from the 1,990 seconds, depicting a frightening figure with a clock for a face. The figure was reportedly part of a stop-motion children's program. No one could find the source. For years, the description circulated on forums dedicated to half-remembered childhood media. In 2014, a researcher identified the source as Clockman, an obscure 1991 short by the British animator Cosgrove Hall. The complete short was eventually located in a Hall family member's storage. The mystery, after a decade and a half, was solved. The video had not been missing in any technical sense. It had been forgotten by everyone except a handful of viewers who remembered it from a single childhood viewing. The bear in the Big Blue House episode. An episode of the late 1990 seconds children's program Bear in the Big Blue House dealt with the death of a beloved character. The episode aired once. It was not included in the home video release. Discovery Kids, which broadcast the show, did not include it in syndication. Adults who had watched it as children remembered the episode but could not find it. In 2022, an archivist identified the episode as Goodbye, Luna, and located a tape recording made by a single parent during the original broadcast. The episode is now available online. Before that, it had been missing for over 2 decades. The Lost McDonald's commercial. In the late 1990 seconds, McDonald's ran a series of holiday-themed commercials featuring the character of Ronald McDonald in increasingly stylized settings. One commercial, by audience memory, depicted Ronald in a snow-covered forest with a series of unsettling visual effects. The commercial was reportedly aired once during a regional broadcast and never again. Despite over a decade of searching by lost media communities, no recording of this commercial has surfaced. The McDonald's Corporation, when asked, has stated that they do not have a record of such a commercial. Audience memories of the commercial are consistent but have never been corroborated by a primary source. The Looney Tunes Lost episode. Audiences have for decades reported memories of a Looney Tunes short in which the standard cartoon violence escalates beyond ordinary slapstick into something distinctly different. Various accounts describe Daffy Duck or Porky Pig in a sequence that ends in actual harm rather than the standard self. Resetting cartoon recovery. No verified short matching these descriptions has ever been identified. The Looney Tunes catalog is one of the most thoroughly documented in animation history. The community of researchers attempting to locate the alleged short has concluded, after extensive review, that it likely does not exist as remember. The memory of it is communal but inaccurate, a kind of collective Mandela effect specific to childhood cartoon viewing. The hauntings are not always solved. When they are not, they accumulate, they become reference points in the lost media community, they are passed from researcher to researcher, they are the medium's open files. At Tier 5, the hauntings are about memory as much as about media. What audiences remember diverges from what archives can confirm. Below this tier, the divergence becomes structural. Tier 6, the censored and the hidden. Media that exists but cannot be accessed by ordinary audiences for reasons of law, copyright, or institutional control. The Library of Congress National Film Registry. Each year, the National Film Registry of the United States designates 25 films as culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. The registry currently contains over 800 titles. Of those, an estimated 70% are not currently available for commercial home viewing in the United States. The designation does not guarantee access. In several cases, the rights holders have themselves blocked release. In other cases, the underlying rights situation is so tangled that no party can clear distribution. The films are designated as national treasures and are, in practical terms, invisible. The film orphans. A film orphan is a work whose copyright holder cannot be identified, located, or contacted. In American copyright law, this is a structural problem. The film cannot be legally restored, distributed, or even broadcast in many cases without permission that cannot be obtained because the permission grantor does not exist or cannot be found. An estimated tens of millions of works produced in the 20th century are orphan works. Industrial films, educational films, newsreel footage, independent productions whose distribution companies dissolved, local television broadcasts. Without rights clearance, these works cannot be circulated. The works exist, the audience cannot reach them. The Stasi archives. The East German Ministry for State Security, the Stasi, maintained one of the largest surveillance archives in human history. After German reunification, in 1990, the Stasi attempted to destroy the archives. Citizens stormed the Berlin headquarters and stopped the destruction. The remaining archives, including thousands of hours of surveillance audio, video, and photography, are now held by the Bundesbeauftragter für die Stasi. Unterlagen. The archives are restricted by law. Subjects of surveillance can access their own files. Researchers can access certain portions with permission. The full archive is not public. Recordings of conversations, films of arrests, photographs taken without consent of millions of East German citizens, all preserved, all largely unavailable. The classified White House recordings. American presidents from Franklin Roosevelt to Richard Nixon recorded conversations in the Oval Office. The full archive of these recordings runs to thousands of hours. Portions have been declassified, portions remain classified, portions have been destroyed, the famous 18 and a half. Minute gap in the Nixon tapes is the most visible example. The unreleased portions of the presidential recording archives constitute a major lost media category that is technically not lost. The files exist in government storage, but is functionally inaccessible to the public. The cult cinema lost prints. Independent and exploitation films from the 1,960 seconds through the 1,980 seconds were often released on a handful of physical prints that circulated through Grindhouse and Drive. In theaters, the prints accumulated damage. The distributors went out of business. The masters were lost. Many of these films exist today only in the form of degraded VHS bootlegs made from off-cable broadcasts in the 1,980 seconds. The complete catalog of American Grindhouse cinema is unknowable. Each year, a film thought to be lost is found in a private collection or a defunct theater storage. Other films equally important are never found. At Tier 6, the line between lost and inaccessible is thin. Below this tier, the works become harder to even confirm exist. Tier 7, the bottom of the iceberg. At the bottom of every lost media iceberg sit works whose existence is itself disputed. Either they were never made, or they were made and almost no one is left who remembers. Or they exist and no copy can be located. The snuff film question. The term snuff film entered popular vocabulary in 1976, following the release of an exploitation film bearing that title. The film itself was not a snuff film. It was a marketing campaign that capitalized on a folklore belief that such films existed. In the decades since, multiple law enforcement and academic researchers have searched for verified examples of films produced specifically for the commercial sale of recorded murder. As of the current decade, no such film has been authenticated. Murder videos exist. Recordings of murders sold for profit have been claimed. Examples authenticated by independent investigators are not in the public record. The folklore has persisted for 50 years. The artifacts the folklore describes have not, in confirmed form, ever surfaced. The 1948 Tampa rocket newsreel. A persistent lost media claim describes a 1948 newsreel reporting an early rocket-related accident at MacDill Air Force Base near Tampa, Florida. Audience accounts of the newsreel describe specific imagery, the rocket trajectory, the response of ground personnel. No copy of the newsreel has ever been authenticated. The MacDill records of that period are incomplete. The newsreel companies that operated at that time, Universal, Paramount, Movietone, Hearst, have catalogs that are now archived but searchable. No surviving newsreel matching the described content has been identified. The memory remains. The artifact, if it ever existed, does not. The lost ending of Sherlock Jr. Buster Keaton's 1924 film Sherlock Jr., considered a masterpiece of silent comedy, exists today in a slightly truncated form. Period reviews described several minutes of footage at the conclusion that do not appear in the surviving prints. The original negative was lost. The surviving prints all derive from secondary copies. The missing ending has been searched for in archives in the United States, France, and Russia. It has not been located. The film is widely available in its truncated form. The original conclusion, as Buster Keaton shot it, is gone. The personal archives of the great unknowns. Throughout the history of media, certain artists have produced work that they never released, that they ordered destroyed before death, that they kept private, and that disappeared with them. Stanley Kubrick's burned scripts, Franz Kafka's letters to Max Brod with instructions to burn his work, the reported diaries of Greta Garbo sealed by her estate, the unfinished compositions of Charles Ives. Some of this material has surfaced posthumously despite the artist's wishes. Some has not. The artist's intent was that it not exist as public media. Whether their intent has been honored in each individual case varies. The Voyager Golden Record. In 1977, the United States launched the Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 spacecraft. Each spacecraft carries a phonographic record containing music, greetings in 55 languages, and sounds of Earth. Voyager 1 is currently the most distant human-made object from Earth traveling through interstellar space. The records will outlive the human species by an estimated several billion years. They will continue traveling through space long after every other piece of human media has been destroyed by the heat death of the Earth's biosphere. In one sense, the Voyager Golden Record is the opposite of lost media. It is the most permanent record humanity has ever produced. In another sense, it is the most lost media humanity has ever produced. It is no longer accessible to its makers and will remain inaccessible for the rest of human history. At the surface, you have the famous losses, the films and recordings audiences have heard of. Beneath the surface, the industrial losses where entire eras of mass media simply did not survive. Beneath that, the Withdrawn, where someone with authority chose silence over circulation. Beneath that, the internet, era losses where digital fragility produces new categories of disappearance. Beneath that, The Hauntings, where what audiences remember diverges from what archives can confirm. Beneath that, the Censored and the Hidden, where the works exist but cannot be reached. And at the bottom, the works whose existence is itself disputed. Lost media is not, strictly speaking, lost. Some of it is buried, some of it is restricted, some of it lives in a single collector's attic, some of it was destroyed deliberately, some of it never existed in the form the audience remembers. What unifies the category is not absence, it is the gap between what the public can reach and what was once produced. The catalog grows. The losses accumulate. The audience that remembers gets older. The artifacts get harder to find.